The Koi Koi Teacher. Episode 1, The Teacher, They All Feared the Sun, was sinking behind the tall mango trees that bordered St. Luke's Secondary School, casting long shadows over the dusty football pitch. Students in faded uniforms hurried toward the hostels, their chatter filling the evening air. A soft breeze carried the scent of fried beans from the school kitchen. But in the staff room, the air was tense. Miss Adanna Okoro sat at the far end of the room, grading a stack of English literature essays with her usual precision. Her pen moved quickly, marking bold red lines across pages, scribbling sharp comments in the margins. She was the type of teacher students respected and feared. Her reputation for strictness was legendary. She didn't tolerate lateness, didn't smile unnecessarily, and believed that discipline was the backbone of learning. Students these days, she muttered under her breath, adjusting her glasses as she marked another poorly written essay. No structure, no vocabulary. What do they even read? To many of the students, Miss Adanna was a mystery. She wasn't married, rarely shared personal stories, and never attended social gatherings. Her world revolved around books, lesson notes, and enforcing the rules. Rumor had it that she once chased a boy across the assembly ground with a cane because he wore slippers instead of shoes. Whether true or exaggerated, the stories gave her an almost mythical presence in the school. That evening, as the other teachers chatted about the upcoming cultural day, Adanna remained silent, her eyes fixed on the pile of papers before her. She didn't notice the principal, Mr. Bako, entering the staff room until he spoke. "Miss Okoro," he said, his deep voice carrying authority. "A word, please." Adanna looked up, her expression guarded. "Yes, sir?" "In my office. Now." The room grew quiet. Teachers exchanged curious glances as she rose from her chair, smoothing her neatly pressed skirt. She followed him down the corridor, her heels clicking against the concrete floor, a sound so distinct it would later haunt the school halls. Koi, koi, koi. The principal's office was warm and poorly lit, with a single ceiling fan spinning lazily. Bako closed the door behind her and gestured for her to sit. His face was tense. "I've been getting complaints, Adanna," he began, using her first name, in a tone that suggested authority rather than familiarity. "Complaints?" She raised an eyebrow. "From whom?" "From students and some staff," he said slowly. "They say you're too harsh, intimidating." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Intimidating? For insisting on discipline? For expecting them to study?" "This is not the military, Adanna," Bako said, leaning forward. "You can't keep embarrassing students in class, calling them illiterate or hopeless. It's demoralizing." "They are hopeless if they refuse to read," she snapped. "This is why standards keep dropping. Teachers compromise and the children suffer." Bako's jaw tightened. "Be that as it may, tone it down. The PTA meeting is coming up. We don't need parents complaining that one teacher is terrorizing their children." She wanted to argue, but something in his tone warned her to hold back. With a curt nod, she stood up. "If that's all, I'll take my leave," she said coldly. As she walked out, her heels echoed again in the empty hallway. Koi, koi, koi. A sound that seemed louder in the silence of the approaching night. What neither she nor anyone else knew was that this would be the last evening they saw her alive. That night, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Heavy rain pounded the rooftops, lightning flashed across the dark sky, and thunder shook the ground. Students huddled in their dormitories, whispering stories to pass the time. In the teachers' quarters, lamps flickered as the power went out. Around 9 p.m., a scream pierced the night. It came from the academic block. By the time help arrived, Miss Adanna was lying at the bottom of the staircase in the main building, her head twisted at an unnatural angle. Her shoes, those shiny black heels, were still on her feet, one of them slightly cracked. Blood trickled from her nose, mixing with rainwater on the floor. No one knew how she ended up there. Some said she slipped while returning to the staff room for her lesson notes. Others whispered that someone pushed her. The police report would later call it an accidental fall, but the details never sat well with everyone. The next day, the school was quiet, too quiet. Classes were suspended. Students were sent home early, and teachers spoke in hushed tones. A few wept. Others avoided mentioning her name. The funeral came and went. The school tried to move on, but it didn't. Because 2 weeks later, someone heard it. The sound no one would forget. Koi, koi, koi. Late at night in the empty hallways of St. Luke's Secondary School. Episode 2, The Day Everything Changed. The news of Miss Adanna's death spread through the town like Harmattan fire. By morning, parents crowded the school gate, demanding explanations. The principal, Mr. Bako, stood at the entrance, his voice hoarse from repeating the same line. It was an accident. She must have slipped during the rain. But whispers told a different story. Students claimed they had heard shouting before the storm. Some swore they saw her leaving the principal's office looking furious. A few said they heard heels clicking in the hallway long after lights out, just before the scream shattered the night. The school tried to contain the rumors, but they leaked into the community. In a small town, secrets never stay buried for long. 3 days earlier, it had been an ordinary Monday morning. Assembly dragged on as usual, with students standing in neat rows under the scorching sun, while teachers sat in the shade. The head boy read the announcements in a shaky voice. Then the principal stepped forward. "Good morning, students," he began, his tone stern. "Some of you have been complaining about the new literature teacher, Miss Okoro." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Adanna stood behind him, arms folded, face blank. "She is here to teach, not to be your friend," Bako continued. "If you focus on your studies, there will be no problems." Dismissed. The students filed out, grumbling under their breath. But that announcement had sparked something. By lunchtime, whispers filled the classrooms. "Did you hear what they said about her?" a boy muttered in JSS 3B. "They say she flogged a whole class for failing her test," another replied. "She doesn't smile. Like ever. I heard she even lives alone." As the rumors grew, Adanna kept her usual strict demeanor. She gave assignments, corrected essays, and warned anyone who broke her rules. She didn't know, or perhaps didn't care, that the students' resentment was festering. But it wasn't just students who disliked her. Some teachers, too, had started complaining quietly. "She's too rigid," said Mr. Danjuma, the mathematics teacher, during a lunch break in the staff room. "This is a school, not a prison." "And always acting like she knows everything," added Mrs. Grace, the home economics teacher. "Doesn't even greet sometimes." "Leave her," muttered another. "People like that, something will humble them one day." Those words would later sound chilling. The argument. The day it happened, Adanna had finished her last class by 5 p.m. Most students were at prep or dinner, and the corridors were almost empty. She sat in the staff room, writing lesson notes when Bako stormed in. "Adanna," he said sharply, "I need to see you." She looked up, irritated. "Now, I'm busy." "Now," he insisted. She rose reluctantly and followed him to his office, heels clicking on the concrete floor. "Koi, koi, koi." Inside, Bako closed the door. His face was dark with anger. "What is this? I'm hearing about you locking students out of class because they forgot their notebooks?" "They need discipline," she said simply. "Discipline is one thing. Harassment is another. Do you want me to have parents storming this place?" She crossed her arms. "If they can't handle rules, they shouldn't be in school." His fist slammed on the table, making her flinch. "This is my school, Miss Okoro. You follow my rules, not yours." The tension crackled like electricity. For a moment, they stared at each other, anger simmering. "You're not God, Bako," she said coldly. "And you won't bully me into being a lazy teacher like the rest of them." That was the last straw. "Get out," he hissed. "We'll talk tomorrow." She turned sharply and walked out, heels striking the floor louder than before. Koi, koi, koi. The fall. No one knows what happened after that argument. Some say she went back to the staff room. Others claim she decided to collect her lesson notes from the library. But at some point she ended up at the main staircase of the academic block. The rain had started by then, turning the floor slick with water. The building was dim, the lights flickering from the storm. Maybe she slipped. At 9:07 p.m., a security guard heard the scream. He ran inside and found her at the bottom of the stairs, blood pooling, her glasses cracked, her skirt torn at the hem. The guard said her eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling like she had seen something terrifying before she died. Aftermath. The next morning, the school was in chaos. Students cried, teachers whispered, the police came, took pictures, asked questions, and left with no real answers. It was the rain, they concluded. She slipped. But the story didn't end there. Because the night after the funeral, the security guard heard something while making his rounds. Koi, koi, koi. Soft at first, then louder. Coming from the academic block. Episode 3. The first koi koi sound. 2 weeks had passed since Miss Adanna's burial. St. Luke's Secondary School had resumed, but the campus no longer felt the same. The once busy corridors seemed quieter, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Even the mango trees by the football field looked darker, their shadows longer. The school tried hard to move on. Classes resumed, the assembly bell rang as usual, and teachers pretended everything was normal. But it wasn't. Students still whispered about the accident when teachers weren't listening. They said her head was completely twisted, a boy muttered to his friend as they walked to prep. And blood everywhere, the friend replied. My cousin saw the body before they took it away. Do you think someone pushed her? Shh. The boy glanced around nervously. You want trouble? Rumors were like smoke. They seeped into every corner of the school. Some students claimed her ghost had been seen near the staircase. Others said she haunted the library because she died clutching a lesson note. But most people laughed it off as gossip. That is, until the first sound came. It was a Wednesday night. The rain had returned, falling in soft sheets that drummed against the dormitory roofs. Most students were asleep except for a few SS3 boys who stayed up late, whispering about exams. At 11:47 p.m., one of them, Emeka, sat by the window of Blue House dormitory, struggling to memorize a biology diagram by moonlight. Suddenly he heard it, faint, almost drowned by the rain. Koi, koi, koi. He frowned, ears straining. Koi, koi, koi. It was the sound of heels, slow, deliberate, coming from the direction of the academic block. Emeka dropped his book and nudged his bunkmate, Tunde. Guy, you hear that? He whispered. Hear what? Tunde mumbled, half asleep. Listen. Both boys held their breath. Koi, koi, koi. Now it was clearer, echoing through the night. The sound didn't match the rain. It was too sharp, too rhythmic, like someone walking down an empty hallway in high heels. Tunde sat up, eyes wide. Who go wear heel for night? They rushed to the window. The academic block stood in the distance, dark and silent. No lights, no movement. But the sound continued, steady and chilling. Koi, koi, koi. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Silence. The boys stared at each other, hearts pounding. Na ghost, Tunde whispered finally. Shut up, Emeka snapped, though his voice shook. Maybe na security man. You don't see security man wear high heel before? They didn't sleep that night. By morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Emeka, here am, a boy shouted near the dining hall. The koi koi sound. By break time, everyone knew, and everyone had an opinion. It's her spirit, a girl said solemnly. She's angry because she died here. My aunt told me if you hear the koi koi sound, you'll die soon. Another added, eyes wide with fear. A beg na lie, a boy scoffed, though his laughter sounded forced. Ghost no day. But when 3 other students claimed they also heard the sound that night, fear gripped the school. The teachers, of course, dismissed it as nonsense. Stop spreading foolish rumors, barked Mr. Danjuma, slamming a ruler on his desk during math class. Ghosts don't exist. But he didn't sound entirely convinced. That afternoon, during staff meeting, the principal addressed the whispers. This foolishness about ghost sounds must stop, he said firmly. We cannot allow such things to disrupt learning. What about the children who claim they heard it? Asked Mrs. Grace quietly. They imagined it, Bacco snapped. End of discussion. But even as he spoke, the teachers noticed something strange. The principal avoided looking toward the main staircase. The Sound Returns Friday was a quiet day. The Harmattan haze dulled the sun, and the classrooms felt unusually cold. During prep in the library, students bent over their books in near silence. Only the soft scratch of pens and the occasional cough broke the stillness. Then it happened. Koi, 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 faint, echoing. The sound drifted through the hallway outside the library. Every head snapped up. Eyes met across the tables. "Did you?" A boy started but stopped when the sound came again, louder this time. "Koi! Koi! Koi!" The librarian, an elderly man named Mr. Okafor, stood frozen near the door, his face pale. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Koi, koi, koi. It was coming closer. Then just as suddenly, it stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. "Sir," a girl whispered to Mr. Okafor, her voice trembling. "What? What is that?" He swallowed hard, then forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Probably just the wind." But everyone knew the wind doesn't wear heels. By evening, panic gripped the school. Students refused to go anywhere alone. Dormitories buzzed with whispers. Some begged to go home. Others swore they would never walk past the academic block again. The legend of the Koi Koi ghost was no longer just a story. It had come alive. And it wasn't stopping. Because over the next few days, the sound began to appear at odd times. During siesta, in the middle of quiet classes, and, most disturbingly, during morning assembly when the entire school was gathered. Always the same sound. Koi, koi, koi. Sometimes faint, sometimes loud, always with no one there. The fear grew so intense that a group of SS3 students decided they had had enough. They were tired of trembling every night. They wanted answers. So they made a plan to stay up late, sneak into the academic block, and find out what, or who, was making the koi koi sound. They didn't know that the truth would be far worse than any ghost story they had heard.